The transport vessel Meridian shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, and Captain David Kane felt his stomach lurch with more than just the gravitational shift. Through the viewports, the sight that greeted them defied every expectation humanity had held about their place in the universe. The Galactic Council's headquarters was not a planet or space station. It was a construct that spanned an entire solar system, with gleaming metallic rings connecting 6 different worlds, each one representing a different biosphere and atmospheric composition. Billions of lights twinkled across the structure, and Kane realized with growing awe that each light represented a civilization more advanced than anything Earth had ever imagined. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered Dr. Rachel Kim from the observation deck, her xenobiology expertise barely prepared for the scope of what lay before them. "How many species are represented here?" Ambassador Thomas Wright, Earth's lead diplomat for this historic first contact, checked his tablet with hands that trembled slightly despite his years of experience. Intelligence estimates suggested maybe 50 species in the local galactic neighborhood. But this, he gestured helplessly at the massive construction, this represents hundreds, maybe thousands. The communication array crackled to life and an alien voice filled the cabin with sounds that no human throat could produce. The Universal Translator, humanity's greatest technological achievement, struggled to parse the complex harmonics before settling on words that chilled everyone aboard. "Earth Vessel Meridian, you are summoned before the High Tribunal of the Galactic Council for immediate judgment. Your species stands accused of unauthorized expansion into protected space in violation of the Cosmic Preservation Directive. Surrender your navigation controls and prepare for escort." Kane exchanged glances with Ambassador Wright. This wasn't the diplomatic first contact they had prepared for. This was a trial. Within hours, they found themselves in the most intimidating structure any human had ever witnessed. The council chamber was a vast spherical space that seemed to bend reality itself, with representatives from hundreds of species arranged in tiers that stretched beyond visual comprehension. Some delegates were humanoid, others were gaseous clouds contained in energy fields, and still others were geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. At the center of this impossible gathering, humanity's delegation of 12 stood on a platform that felt microscopic beneath the weight of galactic attention. The accused, facing judges whose civilizations had spanned the stars for millions of years. "The human species," announced the presiding arbiter, a being whose crystalline form refracted light into patterns that conveyed meaning directly to the brain, has been observed expanding beyond their designated quarantine zone. Earth was classified as a developing world under council protection. Your unauthorized colonization of 7 star systems constitutes a severe violation of galactic law. Ambassador Wright stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over despite the overwhelming circumstances. "Honored Arbiter, humanity was unaware of any quarantine designation. We received no communication from the Council regarding territorial restrictions." A sound like grinding metal erupted from one section of the chamber, and Wright realized it was laughter, from a species whose humor apparently involved sonic torture. "The primitive species claims ignorance," the translator converted the mechanical screeching, "as if failure to detect our surveillance networks absolves them of responsibility." Dr. Kim leaned close to Wright's ear. "Tom, look at the energy readings from our suits. The technology in this chamber is measuring us down to the quantum level. They know things about human physiology that we're still discovering ourselves. But it was the next revelation that truly shook the human delegation." The arbiter gestured, and holographic displays materialized around them, showing detailed maps of human space with accuracy that suggested surveillance spanning decades. "Your species has demonstrated concerning capabilities," the arbiter continued. "Your expansion rate exceeds typical development curves by a factor of 12. Your technological adaptation shows patterns consistent with species that become galactic threats. Most disturbing, your ships carry energy signatures that suggest mastery of technologies we did not expect you to possess for another 1,000 years. Wright felt a chill run down his spine. Earth's space program had indeed made breakthrough advances in the past 50 years, but they had assumed it was the natural progression of human ingenuity. The implications of the arbiter's words suggested something far more complex. Captain Kane, monitoring communications from the Meridian, suddenly stepped forward. "Ambassador, we're receiving coded transmissions from Earth Command. Priority Alpha clearance. They're saying..." Kane paused, his face pale with shock as he processed the message through his neural implant. They're saying the masquerade is over. Earth Command is authorizing disclosure of Project Deep Horizon. The council chamber fell silent. Even the most alien delegates seemed to understand that something significant had just occurred. Though the translator struggled with the human concept of masquerade, Ambassador Wright felt the weight of 50 years of human secrecy settling on his shoulders. The truth that Earth's governments had hidden from their own people, let alone the galaxy. The reason humanity had expanded so rapidly, developed so quickly, and why their ships carried impossible energy signatures. Honored Arbiter, Wright said slowly, his voice carrying a new authority that surprised even himself. I request permission to present evidence in humanity's defense, but I must warn the Council that this evidence will fundamentally alter your understanding of the current galactic situation. The crystalline being's light patterns shifted to what the humans had learned indicated deep consideration. Around the chamber, alien delegates leaned forward with curiosity that transcended species barriers. Very well, the Arbiter declared. Present your evidence. But know that deception before this council carries the penalty of species-wide exile from galactic civilization. Wright nodded grimly and activated the holographic projector that Earth Command had provided for this exact scenario. The display that materialized above the human platform was not of Earth's colonies or ships, but of something far more ominous. Deep space monitoring stations, automated defense networks, and most shocking of all, vast manufacturing complexes hidden in the dark between stars, producing vessels that dwarfed anything in the Council's database. 50 years ago, Wright began, his voice echoing through the stunned silence of the chamber. Humanity received a message, not from any species in this galaxy, but from something approaching from the void between galaxies, something that sees all advanced civilizations as threats to be eliminated. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Several alien delegates began rapid communications in their native languages, while others sat in what appeared to be stunned silence. We have been preparing for war, Honored Arbiter, not against the Council, but for the Council, because according to our projections, the enemy will arrive in less than 2 years, and when they do, everything we know about galactic civilization will be at stake. The Arbiter's crystalline form dimmed, then blazed with patterns so complex that the universal translator simply displayed them as raw emotion. Confusion, fear, calculation, and something that might have been hope. If this is true, the Arbiter said slowly, then this trial is no longer about humanity's violations. It is about whether the galaxy can survive what is coming. Wright nodded gravely, and that, Honored Arbiter, is why the masquerade had to end. Humanity has been alone in preparing for this threat for 50 years. We can't face it alone anymore. The council chamber erupted in hundreds of alien voices as the greatest political body in galactic history realized that everything they thought they knew was about to change. The council chamber descended into chaos as representatives from hundreds of species demanded explanations, verification, and immediate action. Ambassador Wright stood calmly at the center of the storm, knowing that humanity's survival now depended on their ability to convince a galaxy of skeptics that the impossible was true. Order! The Arbiter's voice resonated through quantum fields that forced every delegate to silence. The human representative will provide detailed evidence of these claims. Should they prove false, the penalty will be immediate quarantine of their entire species. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scientific credentials preceding her words. Honored delegates, 53 years ago, Earth's deep space monitoring arrays detected an anomalous signal from the Andromeda approach vector. The signal was artificial, structured, and contained what our linguists identified as targeting algorithms. Holographic displays filled the chamber's center, showing waveform analyses and mathematical structures that made several alien scientists lean forward with intense interest. But it was the next display that caused genuine alarm throughout the chamber. The signal was followed by this, Dr. Kim announced, as the display shifted to show a series of images that defied comprehension. Vast mechanical structures moving through the void between galaxies, each one larger than most solar systems, accompanied by energy signatures that suggested technology beyond anything the Council possessed. A delegate from the Altair Confederation, their tentacled form rippling with agitation, demanded clarification. These images could be fabricated. Your species lacks the capability for intergalactic observation. Captain Kane took the opportunity to step forward. With respect, Delegate, that assumption is exactly why humanity has been forced to prepare in secret. Earth Command, may I have permission to reveal the Horizon Network? Wright nodded grimly. This was the moment of truth. The revelation that would either make humanity the galaxy's greatest ally or its most feared enemy. The chamber's display suddenly filled with real-time imagery from dozens of monitoring stations, positioned throughout local galactic space. But these weren't the primitive satellites the Council's intelligence networks had identified. These were massive installations with capabilities that rivaled the Council's own deep space infrastructure. The Horizon Network has been operational for 47 years, Kane explained as gasps and exclamations filled the chamber. 26 monitoring stations, 12 manufacturing complexes, and 4 deep space defense platforms, all hidden in the dark matter shadows where your sensors couldn't detect them. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. The primitive species they had summoned for trial possessed technology that had been operating under their noses for nearly half a century without detection. But it was the next revelation that truly changed everything, and this, Dr. Kim announced as the displays shifted once more, is what our network detected 18 months ago. The chamber fell into absolute silence as the images showed the enemy fleet beginning its final approach toward their galaxy. Thousands of vessels, each one dwarfing the largest ships in the Council's arsenal, moving with purpose and coordination that spoke of a civilization that had perfected interstellar warfare across cosmic time. The presiding arbiter's crystalline form flickered with patterns that the translator converted to barely controlled panic. The predicted arrival timeline? 14 months, Wright replied grimly. Based on current velocity and trajectory, first contact will occur at the galactic rim. Their projected path takes them directly through Council space toward the core worlds. A new voice cut through the stunned silence, belonging to Admiral Korvax of the Hegemon military caste, the Council's primary enforcement arm. If these projections are accurate, the combined fleets of all Council species would be insufficient to mount effective resistance. Our largest vessels would be outgunned by a factor of 50 to 1, which is exactly why humanity has been preparing. Wright responded, "We haven't just been building monitoring stations. We've been developing countermeasures." The chamber's attention focused intently as Wright activated another holographic display. What appeared was a ship design unlike anything in the galactic database, sleek, organic-looking, and according to the technical specifications, carrying weapon systems that operated on principles the Council scientists didn't recognize. Project Deep Horizon wasn't just about surveillance, Wright explained. It was about survival. Our analysis of the enemy technology suggested that conventional galactic warfare doctrine would be completely ineffective, so we developed something new. Dr. Kim took over the technical explanation. Humanity's approach to the problem was unique. Instead of trying to match the enemy's overwhelming technological superiority, we focused on asymmetric warfare principles. Speed over strength, intelligence over firepower, adaptation over rigid doctrine. She gestured to the ship schematics, which began displaying technical details that made the alien engineers in the chamber take careful notes. These vessels are designed for guerrilla warfare on an interstellar scale. They can operate independently for years, adapt their systems to counter specific threats, and coordinate through quantum entanglement networks that are theoretically impossible to jam. Admiral Korvax's military mind immediately grasped the implications. You've been preparing to fight a losing war through attrition and harassment rather than direct confrontation. Not losing, Wright corrected firmly. Winning differently. Our projections suggest that the enemy's greatest weakness is their reliance on overwhelming superiority. They've conquered galaxies by destroying conventional military forces through sheer firepower. They've never faced an opponent that refuses to fight conventionally. The Arbiter's patterns shifted to something that suggested deep calculation. And you believe this strategy could succeed against a force that has apparently conquered multiple galaxies? We believe it's the only strategy that has a chance, Wright replied honestly. But we also believe it's impossible for humanity to implement alone. The scale of the threat requires a united galactic response, and that unity requires trust that has been impossible to build while maintaining our masquerade. Captain Kane added his perspective from years of military planning. The enemy expects to face isolated civilizations fighting for their individual survival. They don't expect to face a coordinated galactic resistance that shares technology, intelligence, and strategic doctrine. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just asking for forgiveness for their territorial violations. They were proposing to fundamentally restructure galactic civilization's approach to defense and cooperation. "What exactly are you proposing?" the Arbiter asked, though the patterns in their crystalline form suggested they already suspected the answer. "Full disclosure," Wright said simply, "humanity will share every piece of technology, every strategic insight, and every tactical advantage we've developed over the past 50 years. In exchange, we ask for the Council's cooperation in implementing a galactic defense network based on principles that have never been tested but represent our best hope for survival." The chamber erupted again as delegates realized the scope of what was being offered. Technology transfers that would advance some civilizations by centuries, strategic doctrines that would revolutionize military thinking, and most importantly, hope for survival against a threat that none of them had even known existed. But Admiral Korvax raised the question that was on everyone's minds. "And if we refuse this cooperation? If the Council chooses to handle the threat through traditional military doctrine?" Wright's expression grew grave. "Then in 14 months we'll all discover together whether the galaxy's combined conventional forces can stop an enemy that has been perfecting interstellar warfare for millions of years. Humanity will continue our preparations either way, but we'd prefer to face the end of galactic civilization as allies rather than as strangers." The weight of decision settled over the Council chamber like a shroud. Everything they had known about galactic politics, military doctrine, and humanity's place in the universe had been overturned in the span of an hour. The Arbiter's final words carried the gravity of species-wide survival. "This Council will recess for deliberation. But be aware, humans, that you have just changed the course of galactic history. Whether for salvation or destruction remains to be seen." The deliberation lasted 6 hours, during which humanity's delegation was confined to a waiting chamber that felt more like a luxury prison than a diplomatic quarters. Through transparent walls that seemed to be made of crystallized space itself, they could observe the Council's massive headquarters continue its normal operations while their fate was decided. Ambassador Wright paced the chamber's perimeter, his diplomatic experience warring with the magnitude of what they had revealed. Dr. Kim worked frantically on her portable computer, refining the technical data they had presented. Captain Kane monitored communications from Earth, where governments were finally briefing their populations about 5 decades of hidden preparation for galactic war. "Tom," Kane called out, his expression grim as he processed the latest transmission from Earth Command. "We're receiving reports from the outer colonies. 3 of our deep space monitoring stations have gone dark in the past 2 hours. Wright stopped pacing. "Equipment failure?" "Negative." The stations transmitted emergency protocols before losing contact. Someone found them. The implications hung heavy in the air. If the Council had discovered humanity's hidden installations, it would either validate their story or condemn them as the galactic threat the military factions believed them to be. Dr. Kim looked up from her calculations. "Actually, that might not be what we think. I've been analyzing the enemy approach vectors, and if they're using long-range scouts like most invasion forces, we should be seeing preliminary reconnaissance probes by now." The chamber's communication system activated, and the Arbiter's distinctive harmonic patterns filled the space. "Human delegates, the Council has reached a preliminary decision. You will return to the chamber for announcement and implementation." They were escorted back through corridors that seemed to bend space-time itself, past representatives of civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Wright couldn't help but notice that many of the alien delegates now watched humanity's group with expressions that seemed less hostile and more calculating. The Council chamber had been reconfigured during their absence. Where before the human platform had stood isolated at the center, now it was connected to multiple other platforms, each one occupied by what appeared to be military and scientific advisors from the Council's most advanced species. "The evidence presented by the human delegation has been verified," the Arbiter announced, their crystalline form now displaying patterns that the translator identified as grim determination. "Our deep space sensors have confirmed the approaching threat. More disturbing, we have detected what appear to be advanced scout vessels already operating in the outer galactic regions. A murmur of alarm rippled through the chamber. Several species that had been skeptical of humanity's claims now looked decidedly uncomfortable. Admiral Korvac stepped forward from the military advisory platform. The Council's Defense Directorate has completed preliminary analysis of human tactical doctrine and technology. Their assessment is that conventional galactic military response would result in total defeat within 3 months of first contact. Wright felt a mixture of vindication and terror. They had been hoping to be wrong about the enemy's capabilities. Therefore, the Arbiter continued, the Council hereby accepts humanity's proposal for technological cooperation and strategic coordination. However, this cooperation comes with conditions that will fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with galactic civilization. Wright braced himself. 50 years of secrecy was about to give way to integration on a scale no human had ever imagined. First condition, announced Delegate Vexenar of the Altair Confederation, their tentacled form rippling with what appeared to be nervous energy. Humanity will provide complete technical specifications for all defensive technologies developed under Project Deep Horizon. This includes manufacturing procedures, theoretical foundations, and tactical applications. Dr. Kim nodded slowly. Acceptable, provided we receive equivalent access to Council technologies that could enhance our defensive capabilities. Second condition, Admiral Korvac continued, all human military assets will be integrated into a new galactic defense network under joint command structure. No species will maintain independent military forces during the crisis period. Captain Kane felt his jaw tighten. That's asking us to surrender operational control of everything we've built. Not surrender, Wright corrected, recognizing the diplomatic nuance. Pool, we're all facing extinction. National sovereignty becomes meaningless if there's no nation left to defend. The third condition came from an unexpected source, Harmonics of Deep Thought, a representative of the mysterious Etherian collective, spoke through quantum resonance fields that bypassed the universal translator entirely. Humanity's rapid development suggests external influence or genetic modification. Full biological and psychological evaluation will be required to ensure compatibility with galactic cognitive norms. The human delegation exchanged glances. This was territory they hadn't expected to navigate. Dr. Kim cleared her throat. Honored delegates, humanity's development has been entirely natural, though admittedly accelerated by necessity. We're willing to submit to evaluation, provided it's conducted by neutral parties with no political interest in the results, but it was the fourth condition that truly stunned them. Relocation, the Arbiter announced with patterns that suggested. This had been heavily debated. Earth's population will be evacuated to designated worlds throughout Council space. Your homeworld will be converted into a fortress manufacturing center for the duration of the crisis. Wright felt the breath leave his lungs. You're asking us to abandon Earth. We're asking you to transform it, Admiral Korvac clarified. Our analysis suggests that your manufacturing capabilities, combined with Council resources, could be expanded by a factor of 10 if Earth's entire industrial base was dedicated to military production. But that's incompatible with maintaining a civilian population. Captain Kane found his voice. And after the crisis? Assuming we survive? The Arbiter's pattern shifted to something that might have been uncertainty. That would depend on the outcome of the conflict and humanity's role in achieving victory. Wright realized they were being offered a bargain that could save the galaxy, but would fundamentally end human civilization as they knew it. Everything they had worked to protect would be transformed in the name of protection itself. I need to confer with Earth Command, Wright said finally. You have 1 hour, the Arbiter replied. The enemy's advanced scouts suggest we have perhaps 12 months to implement whatever defensive strategies we choose. Every day of delay reduces our chances of survival. As the human delegation was escorted back to their chamber, Wright felt the weight of a decision that would echo through galactic history. They had succeeded in convincing the Council to take the threat seriously, but the price of cooperation might be the end of humanity as an independent species. Captain Kane voiced what they were all thinking. We came here hoping to avoid a war between humanity and the Council. Instead, we've committed both sides to a war neither of us might survive. Dr. Kim pulled up the tactical displays one more time, studying the enemy's approach vectors with growing dread. The alternative was watching the galaxy burn piece by piece while we tried to fight alone. At least this way we have a chance. Wright nodded slowly. The question is whether survival is worth the cost of everything we've been trying to survive for. Through the crystallized space of their chamber walls, they could see the Council's massive headquarters beginning to transform as the reality of galactic war settled in. Defensive platforms were extending from hidden positions, and ship production facilities that had been dormant for millennia were powering up with energy signatures that lit up the local star system. The galaxy was preparing for war, and humanity had just become both its savior and its sacrifice. The transmission from Earth Command arrived with encryption protocols that Captain Kane had never seen before, suggesting that even now, humanity was revealing technologies they had kept hidden from their own military. As the message decoded, Wright watched Kane's expression shift from concern to something approaching awe. "Ambassador," Kane said quietly, "Earth Command is authorizing full disclosure under Protocol Omega-7. They're transmitting specifications for technologies that apparently didn't exist in any official records." Dr. Kim looked up from her analysis station. "What kind of technologies?" Kane's voice carried a mixture of excitement and dread. "Quantum tunnel networks for instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Dimensional anchor systems that can lock entire solar systems into stable spacetime configurations. And something called consciousness transfer matrices that I don't even pretend to understand." Wright felt his understanding of human capability shift once again. How long has Earth been hiding these developments? According to the timestamps on these files, some of this research predates first contact with the enemy signal by 30 years. "Tom, I think our government has been preparing for something like this much longer than anyone realized." The implications were staggering. Either humanity's leadership possessed foresight that bordered on prescience, or they had been receiving information from sources they had never disclosed. Before Wright could process this revelation fully, the chamber's communication system activated with an emergency tone that made all three humans freeze. Human delegates, the Arbiter's voice carried harmonics of barely controlled alarm. "Return to the Council chamber immediately. The situation has changed." They were escorted through corridors that now pulsed with emergency lighting and filled with alien delegates moving with urgent purpose. The Council chamber itself had been transformed into what appeared to be a military command center, with holographic displays showing star charts and tactical information that covered the entire galaxy. "What's happened?" Wright demanded as they reached their platform. Admiral Korvax's response chilled them to the bone. 3 hours ago, our outer perimeter sensors detected massive hyperspace signatures moving faster than our models predicted possible. The enemy fleet has accelerated beyond all previous projections. The central holographic display showed the galaxy with multiple red indicators, moving inward from the rim like an infection spreading through healthy tissue. But it was the timeline display that made Wright's stomach drop. "They'll reach Council space in 6 weeks, Dr. Kim whispered, reading the tactical projections. "Not 12 months, 6 weeks. The Arbiter's crystalline form blazed with patterns that spoke of species-wide panic. "Furthermore, our attempts to contact the outer rim colonies have failed. It appears the enemy has been systematically eliminating isolated systems while we debated." Wright realized that humanity's secret preparations were no longer an option for long-term planning. They were now the galaxy's only hope for immediate survival. "Admiral Korvax," Wright called out, his diplomatic training taking over despite the crisis. "What is the Council's current defensive capability against the revised timeline?" The military commander's response was brutally honest. "Insufficient. Our fleet movements require minimum 3 months to achieve full defensive positioning. Our manufacturing capacity needs 8 months to achieve wartime production levels, and our strategic coordination between species has never been tested under actual combat conditions." Captain Kane stepped forward. "But humanity's assets are already in position. The Horizon Network was designed for exactly this scenario." "Explain," the Arbiter demanded. Kane activated his portable holographic projector, displaying real-time tactical data from the hidden human installations. "Every deep space platform can begin combat operations within 72 hours. Our manufacturing complexes have been producing vessels and weapons for 40 years. And our communication networks can coordinate resistance efforts across the entire galaxy instantly." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. While the Council had been discovering the threat and debating responses, humanity had been implementing solutions. Delegate Vexanar raised the question that was on everyone's mind. What do you require from the Council to activate these defensive measures? Wright looked at his companions, knowing that the next words would commit humanity to a path with no return. Immediate technological integration. We need Council manufacturing resources linked to our coordination networks. We need your most advanced species scientific databases merged with our tactical systems. And we need unified command authority that supersedes all individual species' political considerations. Admiral Korvax understood the military implications immediately. You're proposing to convert the entire Council into a subsidiary of human strategic planning. We're proposing to save the galaxy, Wright corrected firmly. The command structure we've developed is designed for asymmetric warfare against overwhelming technological superiority. Traditional Council military doctrine won't work against this enemy. Dr. Kim provided the technical justification. Our analysis suggests that the enemy's greatest advantage is their ability to predict and counter conventional military responses. They've conquered multiple galaxies using this approach, but they've never faced a coordinated resistance that operates outside established tactical norms. The Arbiter's patterns shifted through several configurations before settling on something that the translator identified as desperate hope. And if we refuse this integration? Captain Kane gestured to the tactical displays showing the enemy's approach. Then in 6 weeks, we'll all discover whether traditional galactic military doctrine can stop a force that has been perfecting interstellar conquest for millions of years. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected source, harmonics of deep thought. The Etherian collective representative spoke through quantum resonance that bypassed normal communication entirely. The humans speak truth about unconventional warfare. Our ancient archives contain records of the enemy's previous conquests. Every fallen civilization attempted conventional resistance. All failed within similar timeframes. Wright felt a chill as he realized the implications. You've known about this enemy before? The Etherian collective exists outside normal space-time configurations. We observe galactic cycles across cosmic time. This enemy represents the termination point of most galactic civilizations. You are the first species to attempt preparation rather than reactive response. Admiral Korvax's military mind immediately grasped the significance. If their assessment is accurate, then humanity's approach represents the only strategy that hasn't been tested and failed. The Arbiter's decision carried the weight of galactic survival. Emergency authorization is granted for complete integration of human and Council resources under unified command structure. All species will contribute their maximum capability to the defensive effort. Wright felt the magnitude of what they had just achieved. In less than 24 hours, humanity had gone from facing trial for territorial violations to commanding the combined resources of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But as the Council chamber began coordinating the largest military mobilization in galactic history, Wright couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing something crucial about the enemy they were preparing to face. Captain Kane voiced what they were all thinking. 6 weeks to implement a galactic defense network that we've been building for 50 years. Either we're about to achieve the impossible, or we're about to discover why this enemy has never been defeated. Dr. Kim pulled up the latest sensor data from the approaching fleet. Based on their acceleration patterns, they're not just moving faster than we expected. They're actively adapting their approach as they gather intelligence about our preparations. The enemy wasn't just a force of conquest. They were learning, evolving, and preparing to face whatever resistance the galaxy could mount. The next 6 weeks would determine whether humanity's 50 years of secret preparation had been enough, or whether they had simply delayed the inevitable extinction of galactic civilization. 5 weeks and 6 days after the emergency integration began, Admiral Sarah Chen stood aboard the UES Defiance, humanity's first publicly revealed capital ship, watching the final preparations for a battle that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity as beings from dozens of species worked together through communication protocols that had been impossible just weeks earlier. The transformation had been staggering. The Council's manufacturing capacity, merged with humanity's coordination networks and tactical doctrine, had produced a defensive fleet that operated on principles no single species could have achieved alone. Ships that reconfigured themselves in real time based on quantum entanglement feedback, weapon systems that adapted their energy signatures to counter specific threats, and most importantly, a command structure that could coordinate millions of individual vessels as a single organism. "Admiral," reported Commander Pike from the tactical station, "final status reports are coming in from all sectors. The network is fully operational." Through the massive viewports of the Defiance's bridge, Chen could see the scope of what they had built. The Galactic Defense Network stretched across multiple star systems, with nodes positioned at strategic points throughout Council space. Each node represented the combined technological achievement of hundreds of civilizations, unified by humanity's asymmetric warfare doctrine. But it was the enemy fleet's final approach that commanded everyone's attention. Visual. "Contact established," announced Lieutenant Torres from the sensor array. "Enemy formation is—" "Admiral, you need to see this." The main display filled with an image that defied comprehension. The enemy fleet wasn't a collection of ships in any recognizable sense. It was a single massive construct that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, with energy signatures that hurt to observe directly. Weapons platforms that were larger than most planets, connected by structures that bent light itself into geometric patterns that suggested mathematics beyond galactic understanding. Dr. Kim, now serving as the network's chief science advisor, studied the readings with growing alarm. "Admiral, the energy output from that construct exceeds the combined stellar output of our entire local cluster. Whatever powers their technology, it's not based on any physical principles we understand." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. This was exactly what humanity had been preparing for. An enemy so advanced that conventional military thinking became meaningless. "Signal all network nodes," Chen ordered. "Implement Protocol Omega 77. Full asymmetric engagement parameters." The transformation that followed would have been impossible to explain to any military strategist from just months earlier. Instead of forming traditional battle lines or establishing defensive perimeters, the Galactic Defense Network began to dissolve into what appeared to be chaos. Ships scattered in seemingly random directions. Defense platforms powered down their primary systems. Communication networks went silent except for quantum entanglement channels that operated outside detectable space-time. To any observer, it would have appeared that the galaxy's defenders had simply fled in panic. The enemy construct responded exactly as humanity's tactical analysis had predicted. Massive weapon systems that had been designed to eliminate organized fleets began targeting the largest energy signatures, systematically destroying what appeared to be the galaxy's primary defensive assets. For 3 hours, the enemy methodically eliminated everything that registered as a significant military threat, their weapons demonstrating capabilities that could have destroyed entire solar systems with casual efficiency. It was exactly what humanity had wanted them to do, Admiral, reported Commander Pike with barely controlled excitement. "Enemy weapon systems are showing the energy depletion patterns we predicted. They're designed for overwhelming short-term engagement, not sustained combat." Chen smiled grimly. "Signal Phase 2 implementation. All units begin harassment protocols." What happened next was something the enemy had never encountered in millions of years of galactic conquest. Instead of the destroyed defensive fleet they expected to find, they discovered that every destroyed target had been a decoy. The real Galactic Defense Network had been hidden in dimensional spaces that existed parallel to normal reality, waiting for the enemy to exhaust their primary weapon systems. Now they emerged. Thousands of small, fast-moving vessels materialized throughout the enemy formation, attacking with weapons that had been specifically designed to exploit the energy feedback loops that powered the massive construct. Instead of trying to match the enemy's overwhelming firepower, they targeted the connections between their weapon systems, the power distribution networks, and the quantum foundations that allowed their construct to exist partially outside normal space. "It's working," Dr. Kim reported with amazement. "Their weapon systems are beginning to destabilize. The construct can't maintain its energy matrix while being attacked from inside its own dimensional space." But the enemy's response revealed why they had conquered multiple galaxies. The construct began to adapt, its weapon systems reconfiguring to target the small harassment vessels. New defensive measures emerged from what had appeared to be empty space. Admiral Chen had expected this. Signal Phase 3. Implement the Prometheus Protocol. What followed was humanity's greatest gamble. Instead of continuing the harassment campaign, every ship in the network suddenly dropped their dimensional cloaking and revealed the true scope of the galactic defensive effort. The enemy found themselves facing not thousands of small vessels, but millions. Every mining ship, every transport vessel, every civilian craft in Council space had been converted into a weapon platform using technology that had been developed and distributed in absolute secrecy over the past 5 weeks. The entire galaxy had become a single massive military force, but it was the final revelation that broke the enemy's ability to adapt. The construct's consciousness, the vast intelligence that had guided their conquest of multiple galaxies, suddenly found itself under direct assault from something it had never encountered. The quantum entanglement networks that coordinated the Galactic Defense Network weren't just communication systems. They were consciousness transfer matrices that allowed every being in the galaxy to contribute their unique perspective to the tactical coordination. The enemy faced not just a unified military force, but a unified galactic mind that included the strategic thinking of hundreds of species, the creative problem-solving of billions of individuals, and the accumulated wisdom of civilizations that spanned millions of years. For the first time in cosmic history, the galaxy's defenders possessed a tactical intelligence that exceeded their attackers. The battle's conclusion was swift and decisive. The enemy construct, overwhelmed by attacks that operated outside every tactical doctrine they had ever encountered, began to collapse back into normal space-time. Their weapon systems, designed to destroy conventional military forces, proved useless against an enemy that had fundamentally redefined the nature of warfare itself. As the massive construct began its final collapse, Admiral Chen opened communication channels to the entire galaxy. To all beings, all species, all civilizations, her voice carried across faster-than-light networks to every inhabited world. The immediate threat has been eliminated. But more importantly, we have proven that cooperation between species can achieve what no individual civilization could accomplish alone. The aftermath would take months to fully process. Humanity's role as the catalyst for galactic unification was recognized, but the true heroes were the billions of beings who had contributed their efforts to the defense network. Ambassador Wright, watching the victory celebration from Earth's command center, realized that humanity had achieved something beyond survival. They had fundamentally changed the nature of galactic civilization itself. Dr. Kim, analyzing the wreckage of the enemy construct, discovered that their attackers had indeed conquered multiple galaxies, but every previous target had been isolated civilizations fighting alone. They had never faced a unified response. Captain Kane, coordinating the post-battle analysis, reported the most significant discovery of all. Tom, the enemy's database contains records of their origin point. They're not from another galaxy. They're from the far future of this galaxy, trying to prevent the development of unified galactic civilization because they know it will eventually surpass their own capabilities. Wright felt the cosmic implications settle over him. Humanity hadn't just saved the galaxy from conquest. They had saved it from a future version of itself that had chosen dominance over cooperation. The Galactic Council would continue to exist, but now as part of something larger. A true galactic confederation where species contributed their unique strengths to mutual benefit, rather than competing for dominance. And at the center of it all, humanity had found its true calling, not as conquerors or victims, but as the catalyst that helped an entire galaxy discover that unity was stronger than any individual ambition. The age of isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun.